Dunja namka lama pa me pa lan kor janjo senba pa de me be ko muzo yo ba ju.
In the space in front appears the Guru in the form of Amitabha, surrounded by an inconceivable retinue of bodhisattvas.
Namo Konjo Santan Tawasan Jane Nam La Jasun Chi Rogo Sanji Language Jan Jon Choda Semji Ando Namo Konjo Santan Tawasan Jame Nam La Jasun Chi Rogo Sanji Language Jan Jon Choda Semji Ando.
Namo, to the three jewels and the three roots, the places of protection, I go for refuge. In order to establish all beings in Buddhahood, I give rise to the mind set on supreme awakening.
Okay, page number 28. Zonzen Charvesin La de Nangwan Taye Loname Rai Chugang On
Hong, innate awareness is the form of Amitabha. Look at the mind that is free of subject-object duality. There is no other Amitabha than that. How wondrous is the truth body of self-knowing awareness.
Om Amidewa Sho, Om Amidewa Sho, Om Amidewa Sho, Om Amidewa, Om Amidewa Sho, Om Amidewa Sho, Om Amidewa, Om Amidewa Sho. Okay, now we have question answer, right?
Yes, Rinpoche. So we do have some question. Ina, I will need you to help to translate to Rinpoche. Yeah. Yeah. The first question is, when we meditate on Rigpa, the object meditation is the mind. Since the mind is not visible and non-tangible, unlike our breath, the object of meditation in breathing meditation. What and how should we observe the object of our meditation after releasing our thoughts from our mind?
Rigpa gom gyape kaplam tingan so rigpa siati sem siati mikpe yur da wachag yore teso da wachag yang semla ta yore mikpe ten chag yore ko da
Tipo como azon. Oh yeah.
Tana kini heme
Oh ya.
Okay. Tiningan so ta rigpa ngubo na la gom gyap tu labdu tini sem siati mikpe ten da wachag yore semla ta go yore yina yang sem siati 통교 요 말이 되니 문종 매바리 되니 배나 so 참살랑서 옥 동랜 단에 옥 동랜 디 mikbeten 쇼나가 so 검기하기 요리 남이나 양아서 셈 mikten 샤네 검기하나 되니 가서 담보 남도 탐제 마욕 마hlு 되니 욕자도 되니 셈 mikbeten kanada bo shogo yorida sem da bo kanda nyamnen kanda chigo dos
Dara chutan chirang trawa de tonda yin do chile de wa dara wok tongne dara ti mikpa zungdang sem zungdang ji yoro wa te nga so shene nani shege yore shene nani tene shene gom de tene sen de ne tabla tene wok yang pa tang ma tang wala tene sen ne tab shege yore tonda de ri do Rikpa hiate tangaranzi te Henene ya nese ni gine tene saja chimbo gomyo yorwa. Saja chimbo tan zoba chimbo laso ba gonde te topo ngola. Topa te ngola tene rikpas. Shenhe yo rikpas. Rik se di kare rigersina. Maga semke nelo rikpa te. Ku meng zamta yor maro. Dongi tene kare higersina. Semke nelo gyotawani. Ngonsum den tonga tele tene rikpas yore. Tedu tara Hineta Korani Yantes Kari those Tarati Simsung Tapted so Karis. Tarangagi Sim Mikbak Yur, the name Mikpatin, Tando in similar Tankin, Tantazi, Tentiki Hipachi Yosomayina, the Ripa Chapiyoma. Ripa Sayate Zimba Tamchile, Zimba Tamchi Mahine, Tini taking walker or taking Nelo Molatini Ripa, Labuduas. Chitang around Rick saying the Ching Tumana, which he don't Tumu Yurju or Rick said, there, what in the Linjoma. Rick said the Carson, save the Nelo Riva. Moman Tomatara, some Tongtaba, or Delta, Ripa.
So your question has some two points really. So not when we observe the breath as our focal object in meditation, that is a practice, a method taught in a context of shamatha or calm abiding. And it is a method for the mind to abide still, tranquil. And so here we are watching our breathing in, breathing out, and trying to be mindful of that. Rigpa is beyond the abiding ability of shamatha. Rigpa is explained in the context of the practice of Mahamudra or Dzogchen. And so it has to do with, from the perspective of such a realization, the nature of mind, we speak about Rigpa. So Rigpa, it literally means to see something. And so what is seen here, you are seeing directly the nature of your mind. So it is just given the name Rigpa, but it refers to seeing the nature of the mind. And so whenever you see the actual nature of the mind as it is directly, that is called Rigpa. And that's somewhat different than shamatha or calm abiding practice. The method is different. So for as long as there is this perception of there being an object of meditation, so there is a mind that is observing and an object that is observed. So for as long as that is the awareness, the perception, it is not Rigpa. Rigpa is the state where you are free of all grasping. All grasping has dissolved, and you are directly seeing the nature of your mind. And that seeing is called Rigpa. So Rig or Rigpa means literally to see, but we shouldn't understand it to mean that it is like seeing an object. It's not like that. But here, Rigpa means to have a direct experience of the nature of your mind, to see what has been there before, but what you have not seen before.
Okay, thank you. Ina, the next question is, reborn in Dewa Chen, is it better or to reborn in samsara and help sentient beings? So which place will benefit sentient being the most? That is the question.
Tini karapendokche yoris tambo Dewa Chen la kiva lena gagareve yana korva la semchen tamjigi chetu korva la kiva lena gagare. La semchen tamje la pen chembo togona dini nana kara yagare.
Then Damga or Rindo Damga. Choice, right? Which choose?
Yeah. Which one is better?
And then I think your question is, you look like it's very high level. What's Sapowa? Did it in there? But it's in top of bed, Sanjo Simbanoji inside a Damga Yunjo. Dam to Yagan, the Bayunjo.
Yeah, it seems to be a question from a very high bodhisattva, because the question suggests that we have a choice.
다 상주 선바 내친 통보이나 지난 긴 감을서는 심지게 또 자친 불을 두고도 근데 직딩 감 드는 데는 나랑 소셜 데는 코와나는 심지게 돈 드나야 내가 자친 불을 두고 찍어 차고도 근데 야래 담보바 나랑 좀 코버 심지이나 좀 코버 심지 다른 코버 심지게 되니 레다 뇨 문바게 되니 지선 람 레다 뇨 문바 지선 다는 코와나는 콘둥기 근데 이나네 되니 담보 나랑 대화진 로야는 야그레스 대화진의 양 로야파이나 되니 산지어 빠민지 되니 랑 레저 드바 탐지 다 연구여 레저 드바 탐지 다 되니 대화지 신의 제처리 되니 나게 따빠 추냠는 지트고요 대화지 신칸에 때 산지어 빠민 무스 추좀 콜로 거고요 와스 무스 추좀 콜로 니마 딱발 거고요 되니 추좀 콜로 콘데 추트 되니 띵 콜조 탐제레더니 산초 선바 지네즈 되니 특징도 콜 넘버요 콜 넘버 지트고요 추토고요레스 되니 추톱 되니 텔레드네 랑 레그 드파 탐지 라파 탐지다 되니 갈레칼렌 차와다 되니 나게 따라 산초 선바가 사 담보 니바스네 야 톱용 거다 신캄니 신캄 랩트 딩아서 롱칸 기본나는 랩네 데 야바든데 말에 신칸을 랩서나 담보니 나 신칸의 제용와이나 산지어 빠면지 나랑 게 주네 뇨모 라파탐지 다 용거요다 텔레티네랑 그 드파만보 다안도거 어네 추트네 되니 냠네시거니 마 따파 추트 냠네시 텔레티네랑 게 되니 시랍도 산초 센탐지 퍼 텔레티네 되니 나가 사 담보 니발라서 바토 텔레티네 되니 랑 신캄 예바탐지는 로터 신캄 예바탐지는 로네더니 다 제오 타마바 신캄 예바 로투고요 말 대화지 신는 말도 되니 사 담보니 바토 다 산초 선바차요 산초 선바차 되니 신캄 예바는 로 산제망 샨지 대다 탐지를 추트 되니 추트네 랑그 드바냐 되니 직딩 칸 마요나 초요 되니 심지제 또 작친 분도 두고요 레스 가르치는 대화지는 로고리 라나 마송 코와나 데데바이나 데랭알 게블로지 제요르 게와두고요 얘나야 사녀야 말한 참자 단지요르 드바요르 뇨모부 드바 셰단랑요르 차도랑요르 다데솔레티네 레 게와야 사고요르 레 메게와 사도 든지친 콘도거와 대화지는 제송와이나 뇨모바시라 제요마 젠도사요 말이 되니 게벨레 코나 듬로라 되니 공은 프로그레스 대화지 시나 제송와이나 심지에 또 드립투고요 자침보 드립투고요 어빠메 산지 대화지 시나 요들릴 때또 자침보 드립투고요 와스 제네스 대화지 시나 요들릴 때 심지에 또 자침보 드립투고요 그래서 또 빼 대답을 아니야 대답을 드립투야 되는 거예요 레스
So if one is a high bodhisattva, then one can go to the Pure Land and in this way accomplish the benefit of sentient beings in vast ways. And then they can also go to, a bodhisattva can also come to this world, into samsara, together with us, and then can accomplish a vast benefit of sentient beings there. So that's actually then becomes the same for the bodhisattva. However, if we are samsaric sentient beings or beginning practitioners, then we still have karmas and afflictive emotions that we follow. And for this reason, we continue to wander in samsara. So from that perspective, if we are someone like that, then it would be better to first take birth in Dewa Chen. So then you go to Dewa Chen, you meet the Buddha Amitabha face to face. You're purifying your karmic obscurations. And once you're born in Dewa Chen, you will always hear the Dharma. The Buddha Amitabha turns the wheel of Dharma, teaches the Dharma there each and every day. You can receive his teachings directly and then engage in Dharma practice. And then you will also meet the principal retinue of Amitabha, the Bodhisattvas, Chenrezig, Vajrapani, and so forth. and you will hear their Dharma. And so as you keep practicing, then first the more coarse karmas will be purified, and then the more subtle obscurations become purified. And so you attain the stages of a bodhisattva, the first bhumi, the second bhumi, and so forth. So when you arrive at the Pure Land, it's not like arriving at a nice hotel where you then just stay, but when you arrive in the Pure Land, you're meeting the Buddha Amitabha. And then through this meeting, the coarse afflictive emotions become purified, and then many more obscurations become purified. And each and every day you hear the Dharma and you practice the Dharma. So your wisdom and your bodhicitta increase more and more. And then as you progress along the bhumis, so you reach the first bhumi, the second bhumi, and so on, that then enables you to travel to other Pure Lands. Because ordinary beings cannot go to other Pure Lands. They can only go to Dewa Chen. And once one has attained the first bhumi, the bodhisattva bhumi, one can also travel to other Pure Lands. And then one can meet the Buddhas there, many Buddhas there, and receive their Dharma teachings and continue to purify obscurations. And then one can also come back to this world and benefit sentient beings vastly. So then why would I have to go to Dewa Chen first? It's because now, while we still live in samsara, today you might have a virtuous state of mind, so you practice virtue. Tomorrow, you might become afflicted, self-grasping, afflictive emotions arise. You get angry, you get jealous, and then you engage in negative actions. So we engage in both actions. We accumulate virtuous karma and non-virtuous karma. And this is how we go around in circles in samsara. So therefore, if you first take birth in Dewa Chen, once you're born there, afflictive emotions do no longer arise on this coarse level, because there is no object of afflictive emotion. So good qualities increase there. And therefore, once one is in Dewa Chen, one can really benefit sentient beings extensively. And this is what the Buddha Amitabha is doing. He stays in the Pure Land of Dewa Chen, and in this way, by being there, he is benefiting countless sentient beings in a very vast way. And so just in the same way, we ourselves, you yourself, can become just like that.
Right. We have a next question. Before using the mala in practice, do we need to recite the mantra of blessing mala?
Good.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So next question. I would like to seek Rinpoche's to give some instructions or guide on how a lay person like us can practice renunciation in our daily life.
Kining so chimta yinata so mikya yinam kining so Amitabha legatamenta chebe kapla chulam ki kapla and so ninchung ki lo khande ki goris
Re ta so ma ja ponyo me tenen khobale ka le ta mamang bon ram ja ta challe ka le di kangin ram na the yor was kangin ram na the di kangin tel tin ta ngone sanji ge song de ngone ri do khwa ngone do ma rin do ya sa ti tin ngon thu go was te ngon the digin ngon thu goris.
So yes, as lay people, you have a lot of things to do in the world, in samsara. As you do your various activities, you have to work together with a lot of people, you meet a lot of people, so you encounter all kinds of difficulties. And at that time, you really have to recognize what the Buddha said, what the Buddha taught is true. Samsara really has the nature of suffering. So this is what you should recognize.
Memang so ta puni chupa mangbo tende jing dang ko wana na do de nature kang ram na the yung kang chimbo tende nature te tene ngone ko wana ngin jong je tene chu se chu be ya bo jong so mangbo yo ras ben malare ba te ta malare ba dam bu dik ba chap chimbo se dik ba chap chimbo se tene ngone hianang jing ko wala hianang je tene ro chu chupa cha so ras chupa ya bo cha go na dang ngin jong je go 얘네야 님종들 나빠니요 카키 뭐는 코알 님종 전에 추양 답바신로 카키야 님종데 땡사포 맞지베지 로버와 로버로 님종지 제는 가서 님종 뿌시만라고 님종 뿌시마 팀보 가게 말이 님종 뿌시마 되게 누트스 지 가르스는 그래 내가 사와야 포지 랜드군 기충충 지르디 님종지 제 오, 당아 로스는 차는 로비 인다시로와 코안들은 님보면 넣어서 로스는 차는 로해치 로스는 차는데 오 로스는 참 다치라다랑 인용이 제대로 로스는 차는 너인데 드니테스 깔레 망보여와 로스는 깔레 데스 자냠네시 근데 람상지 레벨로 지 톱용 거리 상부여와 람상 레벨게 톱이에요 말이 람상 레벨게 마토베 제디 다당 인용대야 미바차 그러와 인용대 미바치 오 출라야 스납시라 만도 그러와 드니 당아 레까지 레건 레까야 레마시 데스 지르라 손라다 로카시 투효성 was 드니 데스 유반도 제 드니 지 출라 lok다제 데소 된상 망보도스 된디 님용들랑 당보니 시랍 니바티 시랍 거래 님용지 제용하는 디차를 시랍지 거 시랍세야 될라 가르스나 담보 님용이 짐신시 드니 님용 제는 남가지 당고 유럽에는 안 참직로고 늘레가티마 요고 데 님보문도 산에 다 딜라스지 나기 싫어긴 늦지는 더 야가리 상지 나한테 보러와 유만 유바지 막지 내가 만어와지 드랭 담이한테 만어와 드랭 담이한테 드랭 인종들 뛰네 내가지 당고 요러와 대 만어와 델디 담이야바 델 산잉 델 뛰네 유바지 막지 오 당하고는 랭도 삼산주야 어디 싫었던 인종처럼 고온도스 tene yang injong yang timbo mi chi hirab yang timbo tene mina tene chirang kobo donghang injong to zan che de ba tele tene tene tes give sim tes che chero le jum de ngo sho da ngana tene kangi ne so kang jong tham che lende ri sam ro lende le tene nga kangi nguma le jing in pal tene da kangi tham ji ma tes tene kangi til tene lende ma tes che chang lo yo de sa tele tene rang sem de le tes che ta Zubata. Tenite Sambata, Zubata, there's Yahoo Chetan. Or Tendicinity Yamores.
For example, in the past in Tibet, many great Dharma practitioners actually have emerged from samsaric conditions. They really have come into contact with samsara directly with this worldly life and have encountered all kinds of difficulties due to that, and then developed renunciation towards samsara and practiced the Dharma and became really good Dharma practitioner. There are many like that. For example, Milarepa was like that. Milarepa first was a very sinful person, but then he developed fear of samsara and he ran off to practice the Dharma. And then he practiced it well. So in order to practice the Dharma well, one must have renunciation, but there are two kinds of renunciation. Now, some people develop true renunciation and then practice the Dharma in an authentic way. But then there's others who cultivate renunciation, but it's not from deep within, and it's more like kind of a superficial, temporary state of mind. It's not very stable, and that can actually cause harm too, because for example, today you're doing good things, good activities, and then due to some condition, the condition causes you to develop renunciation. So you feel all inspired and you feel that I want to do this 3-year retreat. Samsara has no essence. So then you make up your mind, you go into 3-year retreat with your new renunciation. And then, however, you face the reality of a 3-year retreat. It also entails many difficulties. And often we think that when we do a retreat, there will be immediate results. So then there are no results. And then you lose all of your renunciation. And some people even think that, oh, the Dharma doesn't have so many blessings. And so then you might even regret and feel that maybe I maybe I did the wrong thing, maybe I wasted all these years, and so on. And some people even develop a wrong view towards the Dharma. So this happens quite a lot nowadays. So therefore, when you cultivate renunciation, what you really need together with that is wisdom. Wisdom understands the reason why you have renunciation. And then with wisdom, you make a wise choice of activity, such as going into retreat or whatever activity one engages in. Because wisdom knows, if I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, then that will be better. So basically, wisdom will make a right choice so that there is no regret later on. And it will make an unmistaken choice. And in all of our activities, really, we need such wisdom that makes a choice that doesn't lead to regret later on. So where you feel that that was a good choice later on. So that's really necessary when you, together with your renunciation, is to have some wisdom. Because otherwise, if you don't have that, your renunciation will not become stable and your wisdom will also not become stable. And so for as long as it's not so stable and you have just an understanding of the fact that samsara is suffering, at that time you should make more effort in developing a virtuous mind, understanding karma, cause and effect. For example, if I am experiencing some difficulties today, this is my karma. And something I've done in the past leads to my problems that I have today. So it's better to first understand this really well and to cultivate some patience and to cultivate love, loving kindness, and so on. So in the beginning, it is better to make an effort in that.
Okay. The next question, is the Amitabha Sadhana considered as an empowerment for Amidewa Sri Mantra?
Teni upa megi drupta tim Amidewa Sri Nyempati ki wang da wucha ge yorwe drupta korang wang da worwe Amidewa dön chopa ki wang drupta korang.
wang korang Amidewa dön choya rwas. Wang se de tang la kare dugu yo na tini la te ki tara wang nang duas ma mimpa si bala wang se ta la kare nyamni si gwan te wang te tara nga sama ki nani ena tini pena o pa mi dugu na tini rani o pa mi dubya tini lunga sum sinje la ko ta lunga sum dor dina te la wang shu yo res wang se ya te rang ta pa mi ni dewa su ro pa mi la ku go ya pa mi tini singa sa ya 다 사자 진봉고야 돼서 되니 왕 세야인데 근데 연구여레스 왕 톱스들이 아무데와 셔스 사야를 왔어 되니 아무데와 사이 뭐가로 왕 톰도 왕 어두고 르라 나이 사자 집이 이띵인지 대성하는 되니 대왕은 대어두 대왕도 어투서디 되니 디 완동 데라 삼노탄에 되니 가게 아무데와 셔스사
So we first receive an empowerment that authorizes us to practice the Amitabha practice, to recite the Amitabha mantra. And that is how it is with any deity. Whichever deity we practice, we receive an empowerment. The empowerment is called the ripening empowerment that ripens that which is unripe. And for any deity. So in the secret mantra, for example, if we want to practice Amitabha, we receive an empowerment to receive the blessings of body, speech, and mind. And so through this empowerment, oneself creates a connection to the Buddha Amitabha. And during the empowerment, we are then empowered to visualize our form as Buddha Amitabha and to recite the Buddha Amitabha's mantra and to meditate in a state of Mahamudra. So first we receive the actual empowerment, and then we engage in the Amitabha practice, the mantra recitation. And during the empowerment, we are introduced that our body is the deity, the speech is the mantra, and the mind is samadhi, mahamudra. So then we reflect upon the meaning of the empowerment, and then we engage in practice. We accumulate the Amidewa mantra.
Amidewa是只当奥巴米跟心那是吧？
The Amidewa Shri mantra generally is the name mantra of Amitabha.
等你讲往马头讲Amidewa啥出会有的是，往当龙马头讲Amidewa你们是就。
But then, even if you have not received empowerment or reading transmission, you can still recite the Amidewa mantra.
Right. Okay. Thank you. The next question: how can we incorporate the 4 dharmas of Gampopa into our non-dual practice?
Dakpe chushi dim, nganso ngundu nyamlen senati ngundu nyamdo nyamlen kana chigores dakpe chushi.
오, 대 저와데 빼 마실이 야보리다스. 답을 추게 나한테니 말아. 문로니 간디지는 내가 지고래 세나스. 담보가 문로라. 투몽그 문로 예스. 투몽 많이 박은 문로 예스. 제발 좀 문로 쓴 신시비 와스. 드니 담보들 투몽그 문로 나니 드니 담존 니팔 까와당 Matapa Nidoas, Tambo Tamjunipa, Magi Tamjuju Militop Tambichut and Chip. Oh, they get Tini, Chuchus and Roas, a Tambotes, they took this. Chuchus and Roas, a day, Kazangas of Kondushiba in Yimbas, Chuchus and Roas, and the Tanga Tamjuju Militop ne, Tini rang Chut the Dimba Chagona, Tini $10 Himpala over that. $10 $10 다 $10가 신차대 빵고요레스 $10 신차대 빵고나 되네 마다바드 줄이지 마다바 줄 맞게바야나 $10 신차 빵 두고요 말다 $10 신차 빵 마타바이나 추추 야보 추든 로고 말레스 되네 담보 추추슨 로와 시바테게 되네 나랑게 테 담조주 밀리 토바당 되네 마타바 곰바 어때 로도스 되네 추 람든 로와 세바요와스 추 람든 로와 되게 가르송도 세나 담보 추시바데 가르스는 아주 추시바 담보 대하고 추시바데 코와데 동안을 탑을와스 추시바데 코와데 동안을 탑이면 대하고 어야 되네 추추슨 로세데 되네 $10가 신바도 어야 다 추람든 로세데 다 대가리송 것도시나 말한서 양 $10 양아 인종 제장 난 제와 스마치 라다 몰라서 버튼 저걸 린 토비알 사모 당로 여러와서 된 저거 뭐도스 당 코와 탐지 되네 농아당 램델 되네 농아 요데 바테 하고네 되네 추추스로 시바테게 되네 코브 농아테 하고 왔지 레짐레데 하고 왔지 다테 로도 여기 안에 되네 코브 농아데 램데 니와 테 냠네세나 되네 추스로와 추 람든로와 세바 대차고다 되네 담보 대슈야나 왔잖아요 뭐 쳐서
So this is really a very excellent question. How does one connect the 4 dharmas of Gampopa with one's preliminary practice? So first, for the preliminaries consist of 4 common preliminaries, 4 uncommon preliminaries, and 3 special preliminaries. First, when we practice the 4 common preliminaries, first we reflect on difficulty of finding a precious human body and also impermanence. So you think that you realize that I have found a precious human body and I have encountered the Holy Dharma teachings. So yesterday we have mentioned that this is when our when the Dharma becomes the actual Dharma. So therefore, this is related to these first two steps of the preliminaries. So when Dharma becomes Dharma, you have realized that you have found a precious human body that is difficult to find, and in order for your Dharma practice to become authentic, you have to turn away from the attachment to this life. You have to abandon the attachment to this life. And the way to abandon attachment to this life is by cultivating impermanence. If you do not understand impermanence, you will not be able to abandon attachment to this life. And if you do not abandon that, you will not become a true Dharma practitioner. So the Dharma will not become the Dharma, the first Dharma from Boba. So for the Dharma to become the Dharma, first, that refers to the reflection on the precious human body and also impermanence. And then secondly, for the Dharma to become the path. So first of all, we need to understand what actually is the Dharma. The Dharma is a method to become liberated from the suffering of samsara. So first, when the Dharma becomes the actual Dharma, we have turned away from the attachment to this life. And then secondly, for that Dharma to become the path, it is not enough to just have some renunciation in terms of this life, but we should also not think that I want to be reborn in the body of a god or a human. So one must turn away from samsara altogether. And one turns away from samsara altogether when one understands that all of samsara has the nature of suffering. And the reason why we suffer is because of karma. So therefore, those other two thoughts of the four thoughts that turn the mind, the suffering nature of samsara and karma, cause and effect, these are related to how the Dharma becomes the path. So the first one is to understand the precious human body and impermanence. This is how the Dharma becomes Dharma. And then of the four thoughts to turn the mind, the reflection on the suffering of samsara and karma, and then practicing according to that is how the Dharma becomes the path.
Da lam tripa se ati imba samba de lam tripa se. Lam tur se ati nga chen de koala ta jingnang che ne tini showa nyang lam ro so ina lam tur no ro. Ti top za tinga une top song sa ne tini tur no te gi nimbo la gare ri se na te gi nimbo la tini nguro na ne chepar gi nguro sam hinge wa. Oh chepar gi nguro ten ro. Samba de ninje sanju ju sem yo wa. Oh chepar nguro nyamne se ne. Tene sem chi tam je la samba gong 닝제 공 tene samba de 닝제 공 bate tene sanju je semje ne tene rang chosa dubjang se go semji tumji ge chi chosa dubjang se chosa dubjang da kare go chepa tumong mai bu hong ru je yong do tumong mai bu hong ru je kare oya da gongjo sun na chap sin do ne tene rang ge tene san chaya rang ge semji tumji ge digdub jang wa chi de tene dorje semba nyam ni se ya rangi simji tamji kitne sunam je chod dobar sibal tine menram bariya te yoda tisum ya ta te ta btene nga ga sunam je chod ja chimbo sa thewa dibdub ja chimbo jang thewas ta tel tine rang tine lam tripa lenga chur done tine la ya ta bale shone tine nga kita nyamne yapo che de re nyamne yapo che ba te tine tenen truba yi시 차곤 탑도 톱자된 truba yi시 잔에다 산지지 공판 톱으로 와 산지지 공판 톱을 쓰발라 당한 주티 돈담 산주 제 제발 홍로로 유마데 산주 생이야 산주 생이나네 돈담 산주 생다 드니 투모 많이 홍로 이야기나네 라만 남조인 바스 라만 남조데 냠네 시네 라만 남조를 대파다 무빠체네 대파다 무그테 때네 라마시나 랑 줄은 주네 tene rang sem je nelo to denanda ya sancho je sem yule che senanda dor dina rang ta sem je nelo ha ko ne tene tripa yi shin chawa se yate tene chawe yo res ta ngondo de rewa khona ton rewa chapa tene je rewa chawe yo res.
Then number 3 is for confusion to be cleared away on the path. And so what is confusion on the path? Now, if one feels afraid of the suffering of samsara in this life, one might go onto the path of the peaceful path of the Shravakas and the Pratyekas. And this is confusion on the path, because one thinks one has obtained the ultimate when one hasn't, so it's confusion. And the antidote to that is, among the Ngundro practices, the special Ngundro, the special preliminaries. Special preliminaries is to cultivate love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So for the benefit of all sentient beings, you develop love and compassion, and then you cultivate bodhicitta. And then once that has arisen in your mind, then you practice to accumulate merit and purify obscurations for the sake of all sentient beings. And so the accumulation of merit and the purification of obscurations is related to the 4 uncommon preliminary practices. So first, we take refuge in the 3 jewels. We offer prostration. Then, in order to purify the obscurations of oneself and all sentient beings, we practice Vajrasattva. And then, in order for oneself and others to accumulate merit, we offer the mandala. And so through these 3 practices, we accumulate vast merit, and we purify many obscurations. And so then we continue to practice. The path becomes free of delusion. Delusion is cleared away from the path. So we have entered the authentic path and we practice in an authentic way. And then the 4th Dharma is for confusion to arise as wisdom. So that is related to the ultimate attainment of enlightenment. And so of the special preliminaries, that relates to the ultimate bodhicitta, and of the 4 uncommon preliminaries, it also relates to the practice of guru yoga. So in that context, we cultivate faith and devotion to the guru, and as a result, the guru's blessings enter one's mind. And as they enter your mind, you realize the nature of mind, and bodhicitta arises in your mind. So in brief, when you then realize the nature of your mind, then confusion arises as wisdom. And so this is how the 4 dharmas of Gampopa are directly connected to the preliminary practices.
Right, the next question is about visualization. It's a few questions condensed. So how do we visualize our idam better in our practice? Because now the visualization is not clear. So how can we visualize better to help in our practice? And also in this particular practice, we visualize ourselves as Chenrinzik, and the 6-syllable mantra in our heart is it Om Mani Padme Hum? And when we meditate, what do we meditate on before we appear as the form of Chenrinzik?
Da Dewa tela tina Dewa khashiduk thambong ran so chita yidam ki hla sal kona teni sal khana sal go yore sal kale khapo na teni sal ta khanda chi go yore teni tin yamnan tin na teni so Chirezi Kombo Yorim, Nature Rezeki, Tokala, Niga Tupa Yoris, and the Niga Tupati, Omani Padma Hong Reves, Teni Dichatu, Teni Tikomchatu, Teni Kom Kare Gago Yoris, Tangasumune, Chirezi Davo, Jacuna, Teni Kom Canesta Gago Yori.
Tambo Chiram de Sabo Kandaji Chagore Serve.
Tambo Kirim didn't
Chiram the Sabo Tarangans or Yamnesia Sadhana River. Yimba Jutang Gitani the Karitu.
Wang Chin?
Yeah.
So when the very first part of the question, does the visualization refer to this practice specifically, or in general, how shall we visualize when we visualize a deity, or in specifically Chenrezig or in this context?
The first part of the question, it was just on idam. Then the second part of the question is on this this practice.
Okay. 우리 담보디 치당 인자리 치당 이당 검거나.
아야. 드니 저당 아글라 가래 공고이나 라니 소소라 가래를 대바요나. 드니 든 라면되는 아그 왕셔 롱트 민가 착상셔. 드니 데라 곰로는 파긴 들라비는 거와스. 곰로 라바나 이징 아그 곰. 드니 곰 탑다 맞탑 곰 포다 데 곰시 미히도 종하게 따라 드바도 대신 데와 요사리 나라디 뉴무 드바 침보 요 데바이나 데 곰 테스 카블레 커보 요사라 곰 테스 카블레 용고 요사 데니 맞죠 따라 테스지 따라 아 혼돈안에 따라 빼나 소속의 담보 사음범지 요야 데니 데니 도르제셈바 곰데 라소바시는 아그 드바 파장 데니 텔레티는 아그 멘라그 수남사 텐데스는 되는 아그 사브장 니시게 사시디 파랑게 루지 드발레지 드바든지 파장 수남 철사 데니 가지티 상하가 라고야 이제 용거여라 데니 왕쇼 데니 덴제제는 아그 파 드바데 다송아이나 데니 라데 곰시발라야 핀 데니 저도걸로 아 레라우 데니 살라면 유튜브 덴드 용거 있어레스 데니 야 탐라 임바 소소게 한 잡을라말 하장게 대바 침보요나 데니 텔레 무기치 소와탑 덴드 데니 나게 지름 텔라야 곰디시 탑이 제대바이나 디티니야 데스처라 곰시알라 딘딘 핀도 용거 요사레스 아 데니 다라티 나라즈티 어파미 다라 미그름 니믹 까브리도 니믹 까블라 라니 키네 제라 산데네 카테두 랑게 투커셜라드니 six-syllable or man pay me home, the Pandudo, Zakapu number in Pandudo. They are about me to Galantin, about me took it, shut my hotel, so Zunchi, the Marpo, you know, the Delitin, the Rangatso, about me that took a shirt down on Amidewa, so on, the name calling with them, calling with Gablatini about me, or Amidewa, their uncle.
Amidewa Shitty Kavakorgidok.
是的，当包进人个都干了设计有啊，进让你记得，或者进让你今天是啥搭的有吧？今天是都个设了设干好几有的，这他啦6 silver 的有的，6 silver 的，这把个哪把是你盘如果的，设干我是干不如果的，是干不出的人个多呢，把米搞的有的吧？多个把米的人都干了盘呢，把米偷了盘呢，的呢。어빠미 투기스나 제와서 제번 남바스네 되니 어빠미 향리 소용 거랑 암땡데 랑기 향리 휴도와 대 지랑 한팅 검탄 한데네 요래 따라 데마 디데난데네 요래 데마 파처 데마 얘기 잡되는 인도와 어떤 데지네 되니 파스 거기 요래스
So first of all, you practice whichever deity you have the greatest devotion in, faith in, and then you receive an empowerment from the Guru, and you receive reading transmission and instructions, his instructions. So you learn how to practice that deity, and then you practice according to these instructions. And so also our ability to practice according to that clearly also is related to our own obscurations. So if our obscurations, our afflictive emotions are very strong, then at first it might be a little difficult to meditate on the deity. And so therefore we practice the preliminaries where we first offer 100,000 prostrations, and then we practice Vajrasattva to purify obscurations, and then we offer the mandala to accumulate merit. So we accumulate and we purify. We accumulate through the accumulation. We purify the obscurations of our body and so on, and then we accumulate merit. And so, so it can be any deity of the secret mantra, and you have to receive an empowerment. And then as your obscurations become purified, it will become easier to also practice the deity. So then you practice in this way, and the blessings of the deity will enter your mind. Or another way is if you have a really great devotion to your root guru, then you can also supplicate that guru with devotion and then engage in meditation practice. That will also be of great benefit in your practice. And then for the visualization of the Amitabha and Chandrisik, so it is described in the visualization for the mantra recitation on page 27. And so you visualize yourself in the form of Chandrisik, and at your heart there is a white Shri syllable surrounded by the 6 syllables, which is Om Mani Padme Hum mantra. And then from the mantra garland and the seed syllable at your heart, white light rays radiate, and they have the nature of your devotion. And they radiate and touch the Buddha Amitabha visualized in front of you, facing you. And then once your light rays touch Amitabha, then his light rays in the form of red light come back to you. So they leave his mouth and then they enter your mouth. And in this way, the light rays circulate continuously.
Right. The next question, can an original being which has not entered a bodhisattva path, for example, has not developed uncontrived bodhicitta, when born in Dewachan, is able to develop uncontrived bodhicitta and slowly progress on the path to attain full enlightenment in Dewachan? However, how one practice perfection of patience in Dewachan? How does one practice perfection of patience in Dewachan if there is no enemy to practice patience?
So mi Dharma baina ta penam changchup sen ge yo maris changchu sen bacha yo maris teni chu ta chuma mayin ba chuming gi sangchu sen kan ge yo mare teni mi Dharma batin rawchik Dewachan la ge valen teni Dewachan la teni chuma mayin be sangchu sen di ge teni kale nyamlen ze teni ta chokpe sangge da thom ro yore Dewachan la yena yang 상계 고나양 저바 파로도 생고고 요래 드니 대바체나라 양 시당 랑사다 보다나 보 요마르바 드니 저바 파로 칸데 생고레스 대바체라
돈다 제 타마바다 대바진 전에 제송하에는 드니 파로 센투고 말이에요. 사메타 때린도 파로 센바토
저바 파로스다
그래.
저바 검사요 말아 자드는 시당 랑사면도 대바체라
담보 하나 딜비하고 그러와. 해당세야 가리도. 해당세야 열지를 요네 해당 요데도에 랑 생 요를 해당 요데도 대하고 그래. 어야. 자요네 해당 요 자면에 해당이 받던 저 말이 해당 기바데 단지리 단어를 붙이송송 해당세 너들은 용바 간디지 요한이나야 단지 코랑 때문에 열에스 저 단지 요나 해당 요저 따라 해당 나사게 열 미장 지난 셈 나노 해당 요스 저를 열 나사 차도 제서 열 미장 저랑 나도 그 망웅바리 마도 망웅버처도 지난 그 생그 요 나노라 해당 요라 차도 요스 요 유미 체반면도스 지난 셈 나노라 운다 망운 짬리스 요 라틴에 양오 용거 해당 등오 용거는 차도 등오 용거 마도 해당 말랑바 짬지 해당 미바 차요 말이스 단지 요나 뇽모 바차천 요레스 담보대 하고 와지스 대차도 드네 대화지 시험에 제송하이나 다 산지어 밤이 그 추시에 델레테네 산지어 밤이 지 추시에 랑거 접바트 책다 연거 추니네 당하게 냠네 지요래 냠네 지인도 다데도 주바 공고요래 종지 잠고요래 여러와 삼바데 닝지 산주지 셈 공고요래 시랍 공고요래 돈이게 따와제 연고요래 대sol을 띠네 랑기 줄이요 데 단지 뇨몽바데 마세 거다 총총총총로 랑기 시랍다 삼바 닝지 체체는로 텔라데네 데네 나가 산주 심바 사담보던 톱 산주 심바 사담보 톱 세인데 데데 드바 마보 다 찬로 빵 찬로 드바 같이 따바이네 해당대 좀 다거요 라와 드바 같이 따바이는 차도 대좀 다한 거 뇨몽바 다로 되다 Dewa jini hingani nyomo ba taka yores madana sa tambu ni pasine a sanje ji kompang roya yo marwas te taka yores tele tene tene ngage sa demba je ba sine ya ran pa kin de ne tene parasin ba chacham tarsine tar sanje ge yores jine ze dara sanje yo marwas ji ba men de yores nawi je le jine ze ngom bar sanje ne sigido hingani sanje ge jine ze sanje sa dewa ji tene 나한테 대화지 신감 모남 도와 참이 데모 디나나 마송도와 디 참이 데모인데 가완의 송을 열으세는 대 어박은 도는 온도는 소용이 너 산지가 송결은 도요라 디는 저 뒤네 되니 저 돈다 도도 저 뒤인데 되니 다랑한 저 데모스야 데 데모는 된 도알 고래 나오리도 아스 대인 신칼 기와 있는 상마집에 똑바치는 거 보면 더
So first of all, what we need to understand is, since it's about patience, we need to understand when anger arises, what is anger really is. So is it the case that when you have an object of anger, then there's anger, and when you do not have an object of anger, then there's no anger? That's not the case, because the anger is within your own mind. Even if there is no enemy at all, you still have anger in your mind. Even if it is not surfaced at the moment, it's still there. Because just this morning, Dorzin Rinpoche said, for as long as you have self-grasping, you will have all of the afflictive emotions. So you will also have anger. So all the afflictive emotions come from self-grasping. And if you have self-grasping, you also have anger. So even if there is no object of anger, there's no enemy, you still have anger. And even though there is no object of jealousy, even though you are not apparently jealous, you still have jealousy. It's just a difference of being triggered to the surface or not, being apparent or not. But they are still, even if they're not apparent, the afflictions are still there hidden in the mind. So there is anger and there is jealousy in the mind. And sometimes then when we encounter an object, then these emotions of anger and jealousy become manifest. But even if there's no object, even if the emotions are not manifest, they're still there. So the anger is still there if there is self-grasping. All the afflictive emotions are there. So that's the first thing to understand. And then next, when you're born in Dewa, you meet the Buddha Amitabha face to face and you receive his Dharma teachings. And then listening to the teachings, you engage in practice. And as you engage in practice and listen to the teachings, you purify obscurations. You develop the paramita of patience and diligence. You cultivate love, compassion, bodhicitta. You cultivate wisdom, the view of emptiness, and so on. And as you keep practicing in this way, the self-grasping, the afflictive emotions in your mind become smaller and smaller and smaller. And wisdom and love and compassion become stronger and stronger. And so you attain the first bodhisattva bhumi, where you have already purified so many obscurations. And the more you purify obscurations, the more anger will become purified. So this gradually happens when you're born in the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. Because it has to happen, because you cannot achieve the first or second bodhisattva bhumi without having purified the obscurations of afflictive emotions. So they will become purified in Dewa Chan as you practice. And then you keep practicing and you progress along the bhumis and you reach the 7th and the 8th bhumi and so on. And finally, you complete all the perfections and you attain enlightenment. So actually, Chinrezik, who is by Amitabha's side, is a bodhisattva said to be not yet completely enlightened. But there is this prophecy that predicts his enlightenment. And so that is also found in the prayer of Sukhavati by Hamachagma Raka Asya. And this prayer of Dewachen, of Sukhavati, comes from the Buddha Amitabha Sutra and was spoken by the Buddha himself. The essence really is actually contained within this aspiration prayer of Sukhavati, and it's also very easy to understand it. So once you have taken, in brief, once you have taken birth in the Pure Lands, you do not have to have any doubts about your enlightenment. You will attain enlightenment.
We will have one last question. So this question is, when we say that learning the Dharma, it is for liberation, what is the main liberation that is referred to here? And when we say attaining enlightenment, what is the enlightenment here? We say that the root cause of cyclic existence is samsara, and this is the result of self-grasping. Why do we, or why do one have self-grasping?
So this Sungiyorava, so true Yamlen Seadim, Tarpa topic to race, the Gabla Tarpa Seati Kararis, Jersey, Tarpa Se Karagitan race, then answer young Sangi Kopang top Monsolapiorim. The Gabla Sangi Kopang Seati Kararis, then the Penangan so Korva Gitawa di Tangziri, Diang Songiore. Then answer Tambone, Tangzin, Giak, Gumzin Karari, Karasin and Tangzin Gigri.
All right. Ate Java de Chitan things about it. Did Java the lane the Jibin and Yongo to train around Shegorwa. Trupai, she's in Charles at Tin and Yongo to us. Did Java Chapsan.
So this is a very profound question, and actually it will be answered in today's teachings where we're talking about may confusion arises wisdom. So the answer will be in that teaching.
Mati Trupai, she's in Charles at Tin and Betos in the Tilling the Mahyoyong. Till they my but try him by Juna. Did Java the lane the Jammy Yadiche.
So yes, I will try to combine or incorporate this question, the answer to this question in the teachings on how confusion arises as wisdom. So therefore, this question will be dealt with later during the teachings. So are there any other questions?
Rinpoche, we do have a lot of other questions, but the time is not sufficient. So we are not sure how many more questions we can take.
Just one.
Just one? Okay. When our afflicted emotion arise, how can we prevent it or how can we curb it?
Nyomong but Jib Kabla, Nyomo Pakalic Kaktos. Tate Tablam Kakeji area. Pena, Shedan Roji J. Wanara. Shedan Roji J. And Yorgi Shedan J. Yorgi Shedan J. in the Tangara. Sancho Sim Yamnesinita, Sancho Simbas, Sancho Sim Yamnesin, the Nichikazaji Ina. Tangal Mayimbaji Marap J. Wanina. Tene Jordan J. Tamabajina, Namsa Shedan J. was. Tangara Sancho Semyamni Sinido, Hedang Jesaki yo, the Korangan non trust on some, the Korangan non trust, Marala Marabchi. Mala Marabchia, Nakangi Chayati, Narangi ladies, Lele Tinitran, Jeva Minris. Yinaya, Korangi lay and sassons, Koran and Donghanu less sassons, Tinitella Rangi, Lemdig in the Samatana, Samba the Deva get in some Lamsang Kotella, Paningi Gonia. Takon non treches on less sasson, called Donghanu Gris and Tiningi Gomna, Tegaranko Shedan Las Yoncomodas. Titini, Tasanjo Sempanyamni Sinina, Talende Tennis and Notana, Teresamba, Sanhingi Gon, they call Tanyomo by Shedan Rogena. Tenriji Kagudas, Pete, Tavanyomo by Yimba and Tesam, Rictate our Denitini, Bantap Chenendugures. Tene, Ta Gom Jananga, Sakin, Zokin, Lasu, but the son is Siena, Penangazuta, Shedan, Nyomuba cigaretta, Nyomuba Tamchi, Nyomuba Shedan, Rogina. Hedan Korangla, Mola Taya Bayanas, Hedan Jayong Kablas, Tanganam you Gonda Ja, Tachi Gom des Yamnisi, Talama Timina Yunjoina, Hedan Korang all Tawayanas, Hedan Korang all Jitayana, Hedan Hibaji Dodo trip de Bachi Yomares, Hedan Dodo trip deba, do we no Nagasam Jitayana, Tigaran Koshedan Hector, Hedan Tigaran Shunus. Take out Sudakin and the race. Te Tenetini Hedan Ransar Hikuduas, or Te Hedan, Tate, Testin Yamni Chimbos in the Gomia Bojandini, Tatarang answer the Saja Chimbong or two last opportunity to sort the region in Woodwas. Taratiso Kunzam Mona, which between take out the shit. Mamposungudua, Nyomoba the country to Huba. Nyomo more than it in Yomoba, Madriba Him. Hipate on it, Yomoba Samjana Yingiko. Don't say I think it didn't even do us.
So there are a few methods that can be applied. So first you get angry because there is an object of anger that triggers your anger. So if one is a practitioner of the Bodhisattva path, one practices bodhicitta, then when somebody does something really bad to you, to harm you, is really trying to hurt you, like an ordinary person would get angry right away. But if you are a practitioner of bodhicitta, then you will immediately recognize this object of my anger, actually what he did is a mistake. He's trying to hurt me, being really nasty to me. And the fact that this appears to me as a difficulty, that's my karma. But also the person, by being really nasty to me, is creating his own karma that will lead to suffering later on. So based on the understanding of karma, then you will be able to cultivate some love and kindness toward the other person, and compassion then arises. Because you see, through understanding of karma, you see that this person is mistaken. He is doing things that will cause a lot of suffering to him in the future. So then compassion arises, and when there's compassion, you won't be angry any longer at that person. So a practitioner of the Bodhisattva path would reflect on karma, and then based on that, to cultivate love and compassion for the other person. And this is one way of preventing the afflictive emotions, such as anger. And then it can be applied to any of the other afflictive emotions. And then the other way is through meditation practice. When we practice Mahamudra or Dzogchen and so on, whatever afflictive emotion arises, for example, anger arises, you look at the nature of the anger directly. So if you're someone who has received meditation instructions from the guru and who meditates, who knows how to practice, then when the anger arises, when you look directly at the anger, you should really look into it. Where is that anger actually? Is there a so-called anger that truly substantially exists? So if you try to find that anger, then actually instantly, the moment you're really looking, it already dissolves. It already has disappeared because it doesn't exist in the first place. So you can try that out for yourself. And in that way, the anger will naturally dissolve into itself. So this is how we practice from the perspective of the introduction on Mahamudra and so on that we have received. And Dorzin Rinpoche has given many instructions, for example, on the Amitabha prayer, where he explains how each of the afflictive emotions becomes liberated. And basically, they become liberated by looking at their essence and thereby recognizing that they lack any inherent existence. And when that is seen, it is that the afflictive emotion is naturally liberated.
랑 해당으로 녀모 받게 와이나 드네 레줌들 상상해요. 오 당에 해당지지 해당 될 때는 드네 녀와라 젠로요. 오 센나지 센나를 때는 마 드네 여다 젠로요. 또 몰랐지 드네 마 든로를 젠로요. 와스 오 더서를 드네 녀모 받어서 걔드네 레벨을 때는 오 당아 드네 렘베를 쌓고 당 인성좀 쌓고 왔어. 무슨 드네 해당 다녀모 바카레 나더니 렘데기 때문에 삼노다니 방도요 레스 달라 지금 거요 레스.
In the secret mantra,
Dharma soso getene wangbo yunsu soso kare tabdena tini tamla te tini nyomo ba pantab chene tini yabo yores.
So in the secret mantra, we say that the 5 afflictive emotions transform into the 5 wisdoms. And so how does this come about? How do the 5 wisdoms arise from the 5 afflictive emotions? For example, when anger arises and you look at the nature, the essence of the anger directly, then you recognize that anger does not actually exist. And this is then called the anger becoming primordial wisdom. So wisdom, the affliction becomes wisdom when you recognize, when you see that the affliction doesn't inherently exist. And so there are different methods of abandoning the afflictive emotions according to the 3 vehicles. We have just also mentioned the Mahayana before. And how does one practice according to the lesser vehicle? So here, when anger or any afflictive emotion arises, you think about karma and you think, oh, I've gotten angry. If I'm angry, I will take birth in hell. Or if you become stingy, then you think, if I'm stingy, then I will take birth as a hungry spirit. Or if I'm ignorant, I take birth as an animal. So you think about the result that comes from these afflictive emotions. And through developing fear of taking birth in the 3 lower realms, you recognize the afflictive emotion, such as anger, and abandon it through reflecting on karma. So that's another method to abandon the afflictive emotion. So basically, it would be good to practice according to your own mental capacity. So whatever comes easiest to you, this is the method that you should use to abandon the afflictive emotions.
Right. Due to time constraints, we will just randomly pick one other question before we close this question answer session. So the next question and the last question is, it is said that when we rejoice the merits of somebody, we will also accumulate the same amount of good karma as the person for whom we rejoice. So does it mean that when we rejoice in Milarepa's merits and Dharma activities that he has committed during his lifetime many centuries ago, do we also accumulate the same amount of good karma as Milarepa did many centuries ago?
Eso ya rabang nganso pena sheng ki keva de la jesu yirang de komna teni ngaran so tin nang shin sonam ti thok yore mi shen pena Dewa yona tini nga Dewa ti thok yore teni tin nang shin pena nganso mila repa ki ta tupan yamlan sia teni sonam saya teni semchen ki turn sia ti lega kya chembo je yore han tela nga jesu yirang kom sona ti mina bena mila repa ta mira mambo ngula shugu yoraba yine an tanda negapla nga mila repa ki tupan yamran tini sonam chamma la nga cheso yirang kom sona tini nga mila repa nangshin sonam ngarang yan thopirwe
다 지스 이랑라 때니 게와 소남 오늘 토고 요선 다다라 참마게 송요래 다라디 데모나나 송요라 인지 게와스 투베체 되는 차도 뭐그 셈빵나 니네가베 지스 이랑라 대소나냐도 토버쳐서 소나 토고 요서 인지 게와 야고 제바이나 토고 요서 빼는 한마 산지 샤리요데데 되니 추지 잡고 침보지게 되니 니마 따빠 산지 좀 된데다 콜게랑 담자 좀 방압자라 인공 희람 그 니마 따빠 인공 희람 베인데 되니 희라 긴도 나팔야 푸차드 샤마티 마이 방골 테거 방골 테인데 되니 방고도 pe gawer ba pe ga ande ni ko jarbo te ke lega ya bu chigiro san ko ko zo ga ma so nda ta chigo sam jis yang ke sanje ke shila limba kam ne jarbo te la tereng ngo wa te sel ngo chirang su na lap che sa ni je ngo da chirang ngo go so chwa te jarbo te ke sam no chi ta ngarang ge wa lap che sa ni se yo ma re sam kare che ne nga ke sanje ko de je ba le ningon shila di so na lap chi mo che sa ge yo wa tene ta nga ke suna lapche sani tel ngoro ji sin japo ya sanje shurwa tene sanje ke ngoan je ndi pango ge meng bon tene pango ngwa chen ro tene nyima chi le chi nyima ni le chi nyima so se te japo te sma chi vicha tene japo de lombo to tudderse ndi ta khan jimsi ha ko pango to so gan ro ji si yan chi ro tene suna ko so thogo yo ro tene nyima chi khan so 방고를 삼아 맞아베체 주빠짝 만나레스 나안데 되냐면 것도 지스 양 제요 마 되냐면 잡고 그냥 보 어때 지스 양 제바야는 소나 토고요레스 토바게다 짐신도 던지 연고요레스 다라치랑 말라레 팔라 지스 양 제나 치라 말라레 팔 띵띵 대바요레 당와요 그따리 대인데 치랑 주라 박차진 요르와스 박차진 요네 되니 치랑 배 대바 돈 받친 거지 소나 지스 양제 디스오나 토고요레 치랑아 제완 더다야 제와 스마 대다고 주 냠민시네 드니 집지 말라데 다우드니 공방 띵띵 토고레스
yeah, so that is right. It is said that when we rejoice in the merit of others, then we will obtain their merit, the same kind of merit that they have created. That is actually also said in the prayer of Sukhavati that we recite. It says there, when one rejoices in the virtue of others, with having abandoned jealousy, one rejoices from deep within, sincerely in their merit, then one will receive the same merit. So one will receive the same merit. Now, for example, one story of when the Buddha was alive, there was a king who also liked the Dharma. And so there was a time where every day this king would offer food to the Buddha and his retinue of 500 arhats. And so after the food was offered to the Buddha and the retinue, the remainder of the food was given to the beggars. And they were very happy about that. And so then at the end, so when they received the food, then because they were so happy to get the food, they thought that, and they said that what the king is doing is so excellent. He's making these offerings to the Buddha and the retinue, and maybe also be able to do that. How wonderful. So they rejoiced in that. And so at some point at the end of the food offering, a dedication of the food was to be made. And so the Buddha said to the king, so who should I dedicate this offering to? Should I dedicate it to you, or should I dedicate it to whoever has the greatest merit? So then the king was thinking to himself that there cannot possibly be anyone that has greater merit than me, because what could be of greater merit than to offer to the Buddha himself and his entire retinue? So it has to be me. So then he said, offer to whoever has the greatest merit. And then the Buddha said, well, then the dedication goes to the beggars. And so then that went on 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, always the same. And so then eventually the king started to get a little unhappy about that. So then he had a discussion with his ministers on what to do. So then they figured out what is the reason that the beggars are getting the dedication. And they figured out that the reason is that they were rejoicing. And because of that, they're getting all the merit. And so then one thing that the king then tried is the next day, the beggars didn't get any of the leftovers. So then the beggars were not that happy and they did not rejoice. And then the king got all the dedication. But basically what this is showing is that when we rejoice, then we do actually get the merit. So therefore, if you rejoice in the great deeds of Milarepa, just the fact that you say that already shows that you surely have great faith and devotion to Milarepa. And so when you rejoice, then that places this imprint deeper into your mind. And so you rejoice with great faith and devotion in the great merits of Milarepa, then surely as a result, you will receive the same merit. In this and future lives, you will engage in Dharma practice and eventually you will become just like Milarepa. So that's all for questions.
Rinpoche, we still have a lot, but due to the time, I think we are not able to get all the questions.
Okay, no more time, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. 저와도 빼 마실이 야보도 마양주 가장히 마양주 다른 뭐지 가주시 야바 다 대소당 레와 유데바 소소그 냠린당 레와 유데바 너나 저와도 때문에 저도 그 체드된 바 야본도 시타마 투지체스.
So your questions were really excellent, and they were all really related to the instructions that we have received from Dorzin Rinpoche the last few days. They were all related to that. They were all practice related. So these were really all true, authentic questions, really good questions. So thank you so much.
다 드랭 추톤데 되는 알아서 다보 추지가 책이거든 책중마 되는 출바이 시선차야 세대인 바스 출바이 시선차야 세대 다 돈다 톱작 레베데 시거다 출바이 시선차야라 가래고레스나 단지 레토고레스 단도르드나 단지 레토와이나 단도나 다미기 따와 또고레스 다미기 따와 또바이나 되는 출바이 시선 차반이스 너는 알아서 돈이기 따와 또고요스 되는 돈이기 따와 간데 돈이 있으면 간데 임바 다 너는 돈이기 따와 곰바 쭈바스인데 Penna Tana Rinpoche Hibjin, Tawasong, Chiba Chichan, Todat, Chipatin Uyores, Dona Maki Gomja, Penna Sambanda Gom, Ninji Gom, Tene, Sanchu Sem Gom, Tene, Dondam Sanchu Sem, Tony Tawachi, Yamana, Rank Flagom, Roa, Flagom Paladin, Rank Lutla, Nanga, Tene, so lot, Zorams in Ladangani, Yermi Pacha. Oh, Tene. Nga dari la dari si pata nga si pa ma de pa chaw yo ta de ta de ne de ran ni ki ton ni ki ta ha ko ya ta de tham lam la de ne de nyam ni se ne de ne don na nga ki ton ni ki ta wa to na de ne chhu ba yi shi chaw chaw yo de ne ta ha gong de ka ri chwa de ji dan jin si pa de ka ri de la ma so yin
내 당진의 담보 간달기기 요레스.
oh dan ji de dang bo de ma rek pa ni chu yo dona Marek Pani didn't buy it in Timber Juniors in the corner back in the Mayan with us, Marekpa. Or Tenitelin dancing, Nashi Pachubi with us. Nashi but the turn did dancing chat. Not trips at did some trips at that. Revanyo, but some trips at she done do chat, but some to be chat. Oh, that they turned no but some terms at it. Denny, Nisons Yawa Yeda, Dundro, Latam. Ya can come Dewa King. That's one at any job there is. Magavalatin means also to do it. Gavalatin, Dewa Sancho and Lasso Palatin, she can't to us. Or that's some Nahi Patelin to some trivial is. Danzi seems to run the yin ya madaba. Nahi by and to go your man, yin by and to go your man is. Da yin ya madaba. Or Tini de Hakwa and the Intrabish in Chars. Penanganzo, another big song swan, Malare Bak song was Sun Nang de Batamji, no Tamji, same. Rawa same Korang in its summer, Nang de Yoremato, don't trip de Bachi Maris. Pena Yawa Hiba de Nawajiris, Karin now, Shedang now. Shedang in the Yawa in Chandoris. Shedang simply now and then Yawan Chanmado. Tambo put a Yawa ship a drip, Panay Jig zone then go de battle maris. Hag is same with any Shedang Raula, Yawashipa Chumbios. The petted over Yadatan, Ladama, some data with the Yomo Patrogre, get the two to us. Oh, that is dying a data in Paltini, the data of Tribune. Dami get our tone, some of my drupa chadda. Dani get our Dami get our toe deba, one of them some Nanga Yomata. Tara nang de banda tamji uncle dancing in Naval, dancing at the Chandovius. Tara Manzo Ramzon do Jegatara, Saking Molan and Sunguyores. Carison Dosina. Now Tamji Rang is semi on that. Donna, Sorogan Nang de Batara. Nang de Bata. Kare, but they Tamji Rang is same Latin Nang de Dos. Same Latin, you're the Nang Yores. They motto the Yorkipachi trip de Pamandos on the Yorkipachi trip de Yomares, Mandos. Yola tepe on sim Yola tepe. Oh, Yola Tashi, Humux and Nang de be Yortela, Tashi, Jane, Humux and Yorkipachi trip de Mandos. Yena same quarantine Nang de Yores. Yola tepe, you meet Samson tongues, same quarantine the dos. Tati Nang don't keep the same quarantine Taki Jenas. Same tempe, semi wotons or same Koran tak hibjasinta, same shibaji tribduta, same Koran nature tremendous. Your hibaya trucomandos, same hibaya trucomandos. You let the be and miss Samson tongue. Same let the semi wotong manidos. Ta Koran ye la tana, tabjisena, ni Kodinzina, ni shibaji trucomandos. Some tombanidos, that the Sungu Donna, Maranzo sing with Jula. Tony Ninges, a teche, and nothing in Trabayis and Chavas, that they impures. Tara Tabo Rinpoche Tara did an song with Tajing and Shipchire, Conde Nishipate, Yotongbani, Koa Hibate control, Trinity in Koa Hiba Nang there is. 냥인데 히바드니 트루바 헤송 바 트루바 미바 차송 텔 냥인데 바스 안테인데 도나 맞 나한테 바테 단다이 단진에 되네 연낭 말 때네 레사 텔 때네 데도 나와 장마 용고요 된 트루송아데스 다 만트바스 인데 돈이 기타 도나 되네 다미 바차 되네 또 산제주 콤파토 봐 어떤 송고요 사리 다 나서 쪽이 연구 문도 왔대 자마도.
And so today, of the 4 dharmas of Gampopa, we come to the last one, which is for confusion to arise as wisdom. And so that is related to the ultimate fruition, the ultimate result. So what do we have to do for confusion to appear as wisdom? We have to become liberated from self-grasping. When you are liberated from self-grasping, then everything appears as wisdom. So it is this view of selflessness, the view that a self does not exist, that has to be realized. And when that is realized, confusion appears as wisdom. So the view of emptiness has to be realized. And in terms of the view of emptiness, Gachen Rinpoche spoke in great detail about the view, the meditation, and the conduct. And so this has the same meaning here. So in brief, we have to meditate, cultivating love and compassion and bodhicitta. Then the ultimate bodhicitta, the view of emptiness. So to realize that, we practice the deity, we visualize the deity, we recite the deity's mantra and so on, until finally during the completion stage, oneself and the deity merge indivisibly. So then there is no more notion of I'm here and there is the deity. So one realizes that this I, the self, does not exist. So one practices this path in order to realize this view of emptiness, the lack of the existence of a self. So in brief, when emptiness is realized, then confusion will appear as wisdom. And so coming back to the question about self-grasping and how it originates, it comes from ignorance. It starts with ignorance, and then we go through the other 12 links of interdependence. So there is this sense of me and I that first is created. And then that leads to self-grasping. And once there is such a me and I'm, naturally complete within that are all the afflictive emotions, attachment, aversion, and ignorance, and so forth. And then since all afflictive emotions are present, then that leads to the appearance of the lower realms, hell, hungry spirits, animals, and then also gods and humans, the Pure Lands, Dewa, all of that comes into existence. As a result of negative states of mind, we take birth in the 3 lower realms. As a result of virtue state of mind, bodhicitta, the Pure Lands manifest. So all of that, these realms of samsara are created from this sense of there being an I and me. And this does not really exist. And when one realizes that, one also realizes that others don't exist. I don't really exist, others don't really exist. When you realize that, confusion appears as wisdom. So also before, in the morning during the Milarepa songs, it was mentioned that all appearances are one's own mind. Whatever appears to us appears to our mind and doesn't actually possess any separate true existence. For example, hell is an appearance of the mind. It's an appearance of the mind of hatred, of anger. So when hatred is present, then hell will naturally manifest from that. That is what creates hell. So hell is not some kind of place that already exists somewhere and that's sitting there waiting for us to come. But hell itself does not exist like that. But it is created by our own mind. it is the natural projection of our own hatred. And likewise, hungry spirits or gods and humans and so on. All the realms are the natural projection of the 6 afflictive emotions. So when one realizes that a self does not exist, then one realizes that all of these realms also do not exist. Then they also cease to exist. Because when one realizes that a self does not exist, then all of these realms can no longer appear, because the realms are the appearance of self-grasping. When there's no self-grasping, there is no such realms. There is a Mahamudra prayer by Rangjung Dorje, and in there it says, appearances are one's own mind. By looking at outer objects, you see your mind, and by looking your mind itself, you see its empty essence. So the outer appearances, whatever appears, is one's own mind, is an appearance of one's own, a perception of one's own mind. And aside from that, no external object truly exists from its own side. It's just a perception of your mind. That's all it is. So you realize that when you investigate, when you very carefully look at that object that you perceive, and through careful investigation, you realize that the object lacks any inherent existence. It is just a perception of your mind. And when you then look at that mind, the mind that perceives is empty. So the mind itself does not inherently exist. So the perceived object doesn't exist, and the perceiving mind doesn't inherently exist. So when you look at them both, then it all becomes empty. So this is how one comes to emptiness. And so in brief, when this union of emptiness and compassion has arisen within one's mind, then confusion will appear as wisdom. This is also explained very detailed in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation by Gampopa. He explains that the basis of samsara and nirvana is emptiness. And so that means that samsara is confusion. It is the perception of a confused mind. That is what we call samsara. And nirvana is the state of mind where confusion has disappeared, has dissolved. But in brief, it is the same in being an appearance, a perception of the mind. So for as long as there is a self, there will be appearances. And when there are appearances, then we act out on them, we accumulate karma, and then that leads to the various experiences of happiness and suffering. And so this is how confusion then perpetuates. On the other hand, when one realizes the view of emptiness, one realizes that there is no self, and as a result, one attains enlightenment. So unfortunately, we don't have so much time to go much deeper into this.
Dorzin Rinpoche. So now it's 3:45. Should we have break until what time? Or should we conclude this session?
A minute.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Okay, we dedication. Okay, page number 35. Page number 35. Chanjo semjo oje maje banam je je ba nyamba me ba ya kone kondum pwa sho
May bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, arise where it has not been, where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.
Okay. Let to break.
Okay, so 30 minutes tea break. So we will come back and start the next session at 4:15. So Dharma brothers and sisters, we will start at 4:15 next. Before we go for a break, please, we are still appealing for sponsorship for the 100 Amidewa recitation retreat. If you can, please do spread the words to your friends and relatives to actually help us to defray the cost of the online retreat. Okay, that's one. And if possible, we are also appealing for the sponsorship of our new construction of the new center to have our permanent premise. It's always been a wish of Gachin Rinpoche to have this permanent center as soon as possible in Singapore. We are appealing for the sponsorship to start the construction work. And if everything goes well with favorable conditions arising, we will be able to start the construction work by end of this year. But we are still lacking in funds, and we are appealing for everyone to join in this collective effort for our new building. Thank you very much. Thank you, and we'll see all Dharma brothers and sisters back here at 4:15. Thank you.